All right, hello everyone, and welcome to AARP Alaska's presentation on being a great fact tracker. My name is Daryl Royce. I'm the Community Outreach Director for AARP Alaska. I'm happy to have you join us today. I would like to offer a volunteer who's with us today. I'd like to offer Carolyn Brown a few moments to provide some opening remarks and let us all know a little bit about how we got to where we are today. So with that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Carolyn Brown. Carolyn is a volunteer with the AARP Alaska Juneau Community Action Team. And Carolyn played a very key role in helping us get this presentation off the ground and turning it into the reality that we have today. So with that, Carolyn, I'd like to invite you to provide some opening comments.
Very good. Thank you very much. And big welcome to you, Ruth. This is really nice for you to be here. I got interested in fact checking long before the pandemic came down, because if we live long enough, we're going to run into this, and we recognize that we fall into so many misinformation traps. Now, that could be TV, it could be news, a newspaper, it could be social media, it could be conversations at coffee with somebody or at a meeting. It could be any number of things. And so as time has evolved, I also got more interested not only in fact checking and what are the components of that, because it seems to me that a lot of people perhaps could use a little information about that. And so I really got into thinking about critical thinking and what are the components of all that, and how does that relate to our fact checking wherever it may be. So I was so pleased to read a little more about Ruth, who hails from Quincy, Massachusetts. She works at MIT in the Department of Economics, and she's well schooled and trained to provide this information today with her MS in Library Science and MS in Communication Management. But started out as a teacher. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about playing the flute about that too, because I understand that is of interest to you. But I was very interested that you also have certifications in conflict management and mediation and in advanced practice. So I'm hoping we can glean a great deal from what you have to say to us about that. And with that, I think I'll turn it over to you, Ruth, and sit back and see what all I can learn about this. Thanks so much, and you're on.
Thank you very much. Well, there's a Chinese proverb that says, error will travel halfway around the globe while truth is putting on her boots. So the first email was sent in 1971, and it didn't say anything. It was just gibberish. How much of your email was like that today? Just gibberish.
1971.
There was a Pew Research survey that 52% of Americans have shared misinformation, and most of us didn't know it was made up. Some of us did. And in April 2020, after the first month of this pandemic, Facebook removed 50 million false coronavirus posts. No wonder the fact checkers are exhausted. This presentation was actually put together by the Stanford History Education Group and the Poynter Institute, and we're going to learn some really good tips for being part of the solution, not the problem of misinformation. So here we go. We have Abraham Lincoln said, it said so on the internet, so it must be true. But what is the problem with this? Well, for people that don't know history, it could be a real problem. But in Abraham Lincoln's time, of course, they didn't have the internet. They barely had cameras. So he probably certainly could not have said this. What is behind misinformation? Okay, well, money, that's a big thing. Advertising, or people wanting to make trouble, that's a big thing. Trolling, again, part of making trouble. Or pushing an agenda. This pill will cure you, and that pushes an agenda. But it comes down to money. They want your money. And why does misinformation spread? And I am so guilty of this. I'll see something like this that says local park demolished, replaced with the parking lot. Inside source said city sure to destroy at least 5 more this year. And what do? I send it to all my friends. And a lot of people do that. And why do we want to do this? Well, first of all, we're fooled because it looks official, right? We want to help. We want to get everybody behind this. But the next thing you know, you have spread, or I have spread misinformation. I should know better, but I fall into the trap. Some red flags to watch out for. Does it cause an emotional reaction? Either good or bad. That might be a reason to say, okay, wait a sec, I need to find out more. Or creates a sense of urgency. You have to do this right now. Or does it contain a lot of typos? The person couldn't be bothered to carefully consider what they were doing. Or it leads with an outrageous headline. Or this one, shh, this is a secret. So it shares secret information. And then it reinforces something that you've always believed. These are red flags for you to say, okay, stop. We're going to talk about click restraint. And I have to tell you, I use up at least 1 mouse a month. I need to work on click restraint. So what is behind the misinformation? Why would someone want to create a post like this? They would want to create the post for all those reasons I mentioned. They want you to get excited about it. But how can I tell if this is legitimate or not? Well, did it have an author name? Did it even have a publication date? And the source, does it have a good reputation? Or any reputation at all? Is it the Washington Post? Is it the New York Times? Is it the Daily News? Is it the Anchorage Daily? We don't know. But if it were legitimate, it most likely would have an About Us page and also a corrections policy, because even major news sources make mistakes. The difference is they will admit those mistakes and they'll have a listing for that. Original reporting. Again, who wrote this? What's their qualifications? What do people say about them? So, the Stanford History Education Group gives us 3 questions that are going to keep coming up. And I bet you've heard these questions before. But often, in our enthusiasm to share, we forget them. So these are the 3 questions to verify online content, really any content. Who is behind this information? What is the evidence? And what are other sources saying about this? So there's a couple techniques you can use. One is called lateral reading, which is basically you've got your article, and I'll have a few examples, but then you do a keyword search and you look for more information. You don't stop at one source. And in fact, the internet is like drinking from a fire hose. The problem isn't finding information, it's finding information and then weeding it out and finding out which information is useful. So you can ask Google a question. Your keyword search, you want to start with the most important terms first and be specific as you can. So look at this. Is this fishy? Does Subway tuna subs contain tuna? As someone who likes Subway tuna subs, I was a little bit concerned about this. Not too concerned because the Subway subs are good. However, there was this idea going around that it wasn't actual tuna. So I did a search. Does the tuna sub at Subway have tuna? And I'm getting more sources than I possibly know what to do with. So there's the Washington Post. And I read that article. Subway's tuna is not a tuna, but a mixture of various fish. So that was their take on it. And they also referenced Subway's nutritional information on its website. And then the New York Times also was in on this. And these are reputable sources. And then we've got the Subway website. And do you think that's a reputable source? Well, they do put what's actually in the sandwich, which may or may not be tuna. I went to Snopes, and this is a really great website. They have fact checkers working for them. How do they make their money? Advertisements. And they have different ratings. And what did they come up with? Unproven. Basically, they said that there was a lawsuit. Subway denied the complaint, and it delivered 100% cooked tuna. And then they're saying what's false. Well, they didn't have any details about the ingredients plaintiffs claims Subway used to replace the tuna. And then they talk about the independent investigations. So with franchises, you probably know, I would bet that the Subway bread in Alaska tastes different than the Subway bread in Quincy. They're all franchises. They all do things a little bit differently. Some owners manage their own ingredients, so they didn't even know if it was the same tuna. There was something going on that the tuna DNA wasn't present, and Subway said, well, yeah, once you cook the tuna, it's not present. So anyway, the bottom line is this was unproven, and you just have to keep looking and getting information, because sometimes even if you're using a really great source, they may not get to the whole conclusion, or may not reach a conclusion like Snopes just did. And I like the Snopes website for a lot of reasons. You can become a member if you want, but you don't have to. You can submit a topic. You can do fact checks. There's a randomizer that puts up random things that they're researching. You can get a daily digest. This can actually save you a little bit of time. You click on the latest, or you can just do a search, but that's a good resource to have. And look at this one, COVID-19. Oh boy, lots of information, questionable information, misinformation, political information. And I look at this example. Should I get a mask for my cat to prevent COVID-19? The next search would be, where can I get my fingers reattached when I try to put a mask on my cat to prevent COVID-19? So again, I do a search to find out, is there anything to this? So, should my cat wear a mask? And again, look at what I'm getting here. PetMD. Is this a reputable site? Maybe. It could be a commercial site. It could be run by veterinarians. Going down, I also see a school of veterinary medicine. Then another school of veterinary medicine. And basically they say, well, it can be, valuable to put a mask on your cat. They can get COVID from us. Please don't kiss your cat if you've been kissing your cat, or at least do it through the mask. And this one, I love this one. This came out last year. I forwarded this particular one to so many friends. NBA players wear special lace collars to honor Ruth Bader Ginsburg. But did this really happen? Actually, no, it didn't happen the way you would think it happened. The Lakers heard about it and they thought this would be cool to do. So they actually did it after it was reported as a tribute. But it didn't happen in the first place. It was just one of those things where it's so easy to manipulate images. In fact, today, I'm in a group called Toastmasters International, and we're doing a music program. And we had to submit a music video. And we had to sign a release that said, because we can't control what's going to happen to your video once it's out in the world, we want you to sign this release. So you see, they know that anything they put out on the internet can be modified, and they want to be released from any sort of legal trouble they might have from that. For example, if somebody puts a mustache on me, during the video. So, I talked about it before. I'm going to talk about it again. Click restraint. Don't click on the first thing you see like I too often do. Why? The top links may be advertisements. And professional journalists always look beyond the first page. So should we. Also, the Wikipedia is another source. Now, Wikipedia is an online, self-correcting, group-written encyclopedia. And I remember when this first came out, and my husband said, well, how credible is that? It's like saying, hey, I wrote this site encyclopedia and going door to door, but I'm the only source. Well, the thing about the Wikipedia now is it has become pretty reliable. And why is this? Because it is self-correcting, and it's got an exclamation point over here. So you'll see some warnings. It'll say, well, this article has some issues, so try to improve it. They'll say, for example, the topic of this article may not meet Wikipedia's notability guideline for biographies. So in other words, if I want to go in and say I'm a pickle expert and put myself in for biographies, I can't do that. There's a guideline. Also, a biography of a living person needs to have some standards, citations, and then there's verification. Also, an autobiography, again, has to be done a certain way. It just can't be edited by the subject or a friend of the subject. Also, you'll see something in Wikipedia articles about current disasters, and they'll give you some information about that. But what I like to see is the little lock on the right hand of the screen. You can see fully protected. In other words, nobody is allowed to edit it but certain people. And likewise with the interface protection as well. Not just anybody can go in and revise it. There's some guidelines. So this makes Wikipedia a whole lot more reliable. Oh, the questions again. I told you they'd come up. They're coming up at least once more. Who is behind the information? What is the evidence? What are other sources saying? This sounds an awful lot like what we had to do in 4th grade when we wrote a social studies paper. The same questions, but how often people forget them. So this one, another Snopes one. I meant to take this one out, but it's really cool. A dog was captured on video helping its owner back a vehicle into a tight parking space. And before you totally dismiss it, Snopes said they had to do more research on it. They didn't dismiss this totally. I don't quite understand it. But anyway, that is research in progress. So if you happen to see a dog helping to back up a car, maybe you want to email Snopes. We talked about false images. It is so easy to manipulate photos. It's even easier to miscaption photos. Social media and the web have become photocentric. Videos can be doctored. I actually made a recording at the Adams Mansion of myself playing the flute. And when I posted it, people said, cool Zoom background. Well, no, that was the real background. It wasn't the Zoom background. But we're so used to being able to do anything we want on video. So keep it in mind. What you see may not be true. But photo manipulation is hardly new. Look at this. So 1814 photographs were already being manipulated. So we have an iconic portrait of US President Abraham Lincoln, but it's Lincoln's head, all right. but it's John Calhoun's body. So this has been going on for a long time. How do you tell if a photo's been manipulated? Sometimes it's easy, but sometimes it really isn't. But one big clue for you is look carefully at the background and see if everything is in focus or if it's warped. And they say if you can't see a person's pores, they've likely been photoshopped or digitally edited. So we have another tool in our toolbox, the reverse image search. You can do this to fact check. You can see if someone's using an old image to make a new point. Maybe you'll find some manipulated photos. And there's lots of image searches you can use. I'm using Google today. If you go to Google image search, you have a couple choices. You can take a picture, you can upload a picture, you can search for a picture. And I did this with our friend Abe Lincoln. And let's see, I'm gonna have to move this around. And I got a list of photographs of Abraham Lincoln, recently released photos. So you can find, I probably found out more than I wanted to know about how much manipulation was done on his photographs. So now, social media. Oh boy, social media. Social media has been the source of sharing. It's been a source of connection. I think it's really helped a lot of us get through this pandemic, but it's also a source of misinformation. I'm going to talk about some you may have heard of, some maybe you haven't heard of. YouTube, that's a popular source for learning about anything. YouTube videos are so popular, but there's a lot of misinformation in YouTube videos. There's no grand editor of YouTube, except I am going to discuss how we can be editors of all these social media apps. In Pinterest, people share bulletin boards, they share recipes, they share almost any kind of collection. Instagram, restaurants share their menus on Instagram. People share what they had for dinner on Instagram. Increasingly, businesses have a profile on Instagram. And Twitter, everybody's using it. Businesses are using it. Politicians are using it. Schools are using it. Facebook is extremely popular. And probably still, even though I would say the younger people don't use it as much, it is probably the most popular social media app. And then there's Nextdoor that helps you understand your neighborhood a little bit better. And that's got its own special challenges. So I talked about the benefits of social media. You can keep in touch with family. You can pick up a new hobby. You can watch AARP videos. They've got quite a good presence on YouTube. You can stay on top of events. You can get news. So there's a lot of benefits. But algorithms. Why do I always get advertisements from Gorin Brothers for expensive hats? Well, I did a search on hats for my husband and I ordered a hat. And the algorithm, it's a computer recipe. The algorithm says, Ruth spends a lot of money on hats. Let me send her some ads so she buys more hats. They adjust over time. Sometimes they can tell what I bought at Amazon. They recommend other books. Amazon definitely uses algorithms when they say you might like to buy this or buy that. And the algorithms are designed to keep you commenting and sharing. So the more you do, the more algorithms you're going to have. What can you do? You can flush your cache, that helps. But just be aware of that. So, verifying social media. Well, again, the lateral reading, do a search, find out more about it, get a whole page of information to look through. Use Wikipedia responsibly. Practice click restraint. Also, don't forget, you can use that reverse image search to verify what you read on social media. Advertisements. How can you tell? And I have to admit, sometimes I have a hard time telling, but some clues. Sponsored by the University of Bordeaux. Did you know that Bordeaux is good for you? Well, this is sponsored by the University of Bordeaux. Or in partnership with Hershey's Chocolate. Chocolate is good for you. Presented by the Cheese Council. Eat more cheese. Or paid content. Paid content can sometimes be very tricky. I actually worked for syndicated advertising, and we would write articles about chiropractic, about dentistry, but it was paid content. So I would write an article saying how important the yearly dental checkup was. And the information was good, it was well researched, but someone paid me to write that. That was an ad. And you wouldn't know that unless you looked the teeny weeny print where it said it was paid content. But your role as editors, what you can do to help reduce bad information. Facebook, we talked about, you can keep in touch with friends and family. People post events and news, but misinformation shows up all the time in text posts, in memes, in images, in video. It's all over the place. And then people forward it, people share it. But what can you do about it? Well, first of all, Facebook does something about it. They have a little eye here if something is questionable. And that is misinformation. So if you look for the eye, you can click on that notice and find out more. But they also have other things here. They have independent fact checkers who say this information has no basis in fact. So there's some fact checking going on within Facebook. And if you see bad information, you can select 3 dots, find support or report post, select false news, next, done, and you've done your part to reduce false information on Facebook. But really, you would have done your part if you didn't wind up sharing it with everybody. Fighting the Facebook algorithm. You do have a choice with that. You can say, I only want my friends to see this. I only want them to see pages. I only want people that I see first. So you've got some choices. And you've also got a lot of choices in Facebook as to who can even look at your page in the security settings. False information on YouTube. I talked about helpful videos, but fans fan those misinformation flames. And you can just go down a rabbit hole. You can spend way too much time on YouTube. So when you find false information, okay, the dots go another way, but when you see 3 dots, it usually means more to come. So you can select report, you can say it's spam or misleading, and then you can report it. Instagram, owned by Facebook, same company. You share pictures, video of your friends and family. And again, the misinformation shows up in memes. And I don't think I talked about what a meme was, but there was a meme of Bernie Sanders in giant mittens sitting in the White House, sitting outside the White House at the inauguration. And all of a sudden, pictures of Bernie Sanders show up in orchestras, at Burger Kings, in advertising. that picture just shows up everywhere. So that's a meme. Images, misinformation shows up in there all the time. For example, I took pictures of my tomatoes today and I posted it up on Instagram. And if I wanted to make them a little redder, I could do that and you would never know. So, misinformation. It's hidden, it's marked and hidden similar to Facebook. And you can report it similar to Facebook. The 3 dots, report, it's inappropriate, it's false information. And the same thing with Pinterest. Pinterest is a little different in that they try to remove misinformation for you right away. But if you see something, report it. 3 dots, report misinformation. They give you a choice of what type of misinformation, and then you can report it. Nextdoor. That's a fairly new one, and it connects you with neighbors. I personally think this one can be a little dicey, only because you're sharing a lot of information with people you may not know so well. It may not be all that reliable. Some people do like it. You can find local handy people to fix things, but misinformation is not labeled. But still, they do let you report anything that seems very funny or fishy. They have a down arrow. You can report the post or comment. You can select fraud. You can say misinformation or abuse related to the census. That was a big deal. Election, that was a big deal. Or COVID-19, still ongoing. And then you click next and they have even more instructions. Twitter, breaking news, but topics can be manipulated. The other thing, it's easier than other platforms to create fake personas, and that can be a problem. I might be Ruth Levitsky, I might be the real Ruth Levitsky, I might be pretend Ruth Levitsky, or I may have a totally different name, or I might have multiple Twitter accounts. So, again, with Twitter, the same thing. You can report tweets. You can also say it's misleading about a political or other civic event. And they have kicked people off Twitter. You do something inappropriate, you will, they try to make it a community that works, and it doesn't work if you've got somebody who's just, for example, making racist comments. They don't put up with that. The questions again: who is behind the information? What is the evidence? What are other sources saying? And this is from the World Health Organization. I love this chart for a lot of reasons. They call this tips for navigating the infodemic. And we certainly have an infodemic. And they just summarize what we've been talking about. What is the source? Go beyond the headlines. And I am guilty of this. Sometimes, like last week, for example, I was reading a headline: Simone Biles injured and drops out of the competition. Well, as it turns out, the headline was a little premature. She did drop out of the competition, but she wasn't physically injured. And that's what happens when you just read headlines. And I don't know how many people I forwarded that headline to before I got more information. Identify the author. And this is important. Who else has mentioned this author? What I love about Wikipedia is that they've got lists of sources, lots of links you can click on. And that really helps you decide, well, is this information useful? What sources are they using? What do their sources say? We talked about checking the date. That's so important. Examining the supporting evidence. What stories do they have to back up these claims? But also think about your own biases. How are they affecting your judgment? And then turn to fact checkers. There's an international fact checking network, there's Snopes, there's lots of different sources you can use. I would even say the lowest tech source of fact checking, your local reference librarian. You can call up, a lot of times you can do email chat, and they will, do a fact check for you. They'll tell you the source that they got it from. So that's often a too often overlooked resource that most of us have access to. And this is also a filter that I like for filtering out information. So this person didn't send a rumor to the group chat, and this person double checked their facts, and this person got their news from trusted sources, and this person asked, how do you know that's true? And these may seem like basic questions, but if you ask them, you will save yourself a world of trouble. You can practice too. Games. I know the weather has been good where you are, so you may not want to play video games just yet. But on some bad weather day, go to getbadnews.com and there is a game on fake news. And you get to see what it's like to create fake news. And there's a lot of prompts and learning along the way. It's just a lot of fun. And then there's a game called goviralgame.com. And this is a lot of fun too. And this game helps protect you against COVID-19 misinformation. And I have to say, with COVID-19, it is getting worse, not getting better. Those fact checkers are never going to get any sleep. It just keeps getting worse and more of it to deal with. And you see here, fake and fact, there's really a thin line between it, but we want to get to fact. So I'm hoping these tips will help you avoid some of the pits that I've fallen into.
Ruth, thank you very much for that. Can we go ahead and just invite everyone now, if they'd like to either ask a question or submit a question in chat. And with that, I know we do have a question in chat that did show up. Basically, it's sort of asking your thoughts, Ruth, on misinformation in politics.
Oh, there is so much misinformation in politics. But the whole thing is, I think first that you have to be aware where you stand in what your personal opinion is. And again, if you fact check your own sources too, I think that's important. There is so much, I won't even say misinformation, there's just so much information out there. And a lot of it you have to filter for yourself. And that's basically it. We all come with different political perspectives, and that's really the thing. And you just have to critically think about something. And I think increasingly it's hard to lie about things because of cell phones, because of video. But on the other hand, I was talking about things being manipulated. That's also, something you need to think about. I think it's just, really, really tough with the misinformation in politics. It depends on your perspective, but it's definitely a hot topic.
And we have another question that came in also that, can you explain how to search for a photo?
Yeah. So if you're going into, in fact, I think I can actually share a screen again. Let me find a good place to see if I can get a Google. So yes, I very excuse my fingers. I've got my cameras in the funniest of places. So I'm going to try this once more. So I'm going to use Google Images. And I'm going to share a screen. And here we have Google Images. And I can, let's see, who do we want to, who do we want to get a picture of? Oh, okay. Somebody give me a topic. What do we want to get a picture of?
Life on Mars.
Ooh, life on Mars. That's a good one. So I could do a search like that. Oh, come on. That's a good one. And then we're going to get pictures of life on Mars. And then, let's see. So we've got quite a bit of, so that's some pictures. So that's one way to do it. Let me do another search. I'm going to save. Well, that's a Wikipedia one. I'm going to save this to my desktop and see if I can do this another way. I think I can. So I'm going to call that Mars. And then I'm going to go back. And this time I'm going to search by image. And I'm going to upload an image. And I'm going to try to upload that Mars picture and see how that's going to work. Uploading file, there we go. And it gave me 2 results. So no other sizes of this image were found. And then it refers me to the Wikipedia. And then it gives me visually similar images. So you can kind of go down a rabbit hole with this. So you've got a couple choices.
Ruth, we have a couple more questions in chat.
Yeah.
Well, first one, do you have some pearls for how we can engage in a conversation with people who may be putting forth outrageous ideologies?
That is a real challenge because, I want to say, listen, but sometimes it's really hard to listen to that. You can say, why do you believe that? The other thing is that you can always discuss what are facts. If somebody says something didn't happen, well, according to this news source and this news source and this news source, it did happen. And I think that I want to say if you're armed with facts, that always works, but it doesn't. Coronavirus is a huge source of misinformation, of contention, especially even in Massachusetts. We have a good vaccination rate, but not perfect. And I have some friends that don't want to take it because they say, well, it's not proven. And I'll try to go back with some facts that, well, according to this study, if you get coronavirus, it'll be, less. And according to, to this doctor's study, sometimes people get their information from other places. And that's the thing. If I say my perspective is I want to get medical information from medical professionals, not from, necessarily my local health food store. But I think a lot of things going on now are really, really tough, and you should express your opinions and use your sources, and why you believe this to be true. Because a lot of times, you're talking to people and the reason they believe it is because they've always believed it. And they just have not very good information.
And Ruth, we have another question that says, how can we best be civil when calling an agency or a person out for outrageous statements?
I think the same thing is sticking to facts, but I think also that, you have to have your own convictions, and some things, are just tough to deal with. But when you're, the more information you have, I think the better it is. If you can say, for example, that, according to this study and that study, and how do your facts stand up against my facts? And that, emotion is not a fact. And if you can engage them in that way. But I mean, I think that, be as civil as you can. And, you can also do things, for example, like saying, so this is your opinion, you believe this way because, and I believe this way because, and, just try to use persuasion.
We have another question in chat. What are some suggestions when we are called into conflict management in order to offer up alternative thoughts?
Okay, well, that would depend on the situation, but again, it comes to listening. It comes to what the other party wants. And I'll take COVID as an example. We all want to stay healthy. We all, would like to go back to normal. We all would like to avoid the virus. And if we talk about what we all want, then we can talk, well, how do we get there? And how effective are the ways that we're going to get there? And for example, masks have become this huge political issue. And if you remember at the beginning of the pandemic, these same people who didn't like masks were buying them up off of Amazon. It was the same group, but now they're saying, this is something, I don't want to do anymore. So I think that with the conflict, it's finding out what would work best for everybody. And, and I think that when people feel listened to, that they're more likely to be open to some of your ideas. But I won't say it's easy.
Well, speaking of listening, I do want to give the opportunity for everyone on the call here today or in the meeting to ask any questions. If you'd like to ask a question, you're absolutely welcome to place another question in chat. Looks like we have another one. How can we best manage the ideology of white supremacy? I just came in and chat. You're also welcome to unmute if you'd like and ask your question live. So we do have enough time. It's about 12 minutes before the top of the hour. So before you jump into that question, we just want to let everybody know that they do have an opportunity to either ask a question live or submit it in chat. So Ruth, what do you think about that last question in chat?
Oh boy. Okay. Now there's some things that just cross a line, and that one crosses the line. And fortunately, a lot of the social media just simply doesn't allow it. They don't allow that level of hate. And I mean, it's just to confront it every chance you get as what it is. And don't let it take root. I mean, that's really, I really say with that I do admire that a lot of the social media is just nipping that sort of stuff in the bud. They don't allow hate speech. They don't allow that sort of racism. And you're going to see it again. I mean, I would say that just try to counteract that. When you see it, call it out. And it's just, it's unfortunate, but it's something that I think we can all do something about. And definitely report it when you see it.
Okay, so we do have a few minutes remaining. Again, just want to give everyone an opportunity here. If you do have a question for Ruth, we do have some more time with her for about 10 or 11 more minutes. If you'd like, we do have a couple more questions in chat, it looks like, Ruth. How do you change your algorithms? it looks like. How would you like to address that, Ruth?
So basically, the way you can change your algorithms is that you can go to your security settings and you can decide what, who gets to see your Facebook. I don't know if there's a way to totally, I may have to get back to you on that. The way you could really change your algorithms is never buy anything or never look at anything. But, if you flush the cache in your browser, that should help. But I may have to get back to you on that because I don't know if there's a way to totally change every algorithm. That's how Facebook works. That's how these things work. The other thing is, though, that if you pay for something, for example, the version of YouTube that doesn't have ads, that probably reduces your algorithm. But I can research that more for you and get back to you because I would love to know if there's a way to totally fake Facebook out.
Right. And we have another question, Chet. How do we know how to best report what is going on?
Well, with the social media, they give you a lot of different mechanisms. So if you see one of those white supremacy groups, you can report that to them. And certainly, if you see something on the internet like that, feel free to call, your local, I don't know, police department if you see something that people are doing that's just awful. And, just let them know there's this Facebook group and they're running these kind of events and possibly they can at least know what's going on. But fortunately, most of them have some mechanism. A lot of them will just boot these groups off.
All right. Well, I know we're nearing the top of the hour here, Ruth, and I do want to take a couple of minutes here and thank you very much for sharing your time with us today, sharing your expertise, your knowledge, and all the things that you've learned so that we can all be smarter with our online and virtual existence. As I think the pandemic has brought on a much greater use, as kind of you and I spoke about at the beginning of how we spend more time online now. And it's always good to have these skills, these tools available for us as we spend a lot of our time sitting in front of screens. So I do want to say thank you for sharing this. Thank you for sharing, especially with AARP. I know it was great that we were able to reach out to you and have you join us today. And Carolyn, I want to give you or Teresa an opportunity here if you have any final thoughts before we wrap this up for the day.
Well, thank you very much, Ruth. I really appreciated the many different ways that you brought information to us today. I just have a quick question for you. How long have you been a Toastmaster person? And how did you go to that and why did you go to that?
Well, actually, one of my friends tried to get me to join right after college. And the first meeting I went to was so awful, I never came back. But then I started a job at MIT and I was looking for a bathroom. And I went into this room of very interesting people at MIT. And I like to say I'm the assistant to the geniuses. And I was immediately hooked. And I've been a member ever since. And that was 27 years ago. But it's a great place to practice your speaking skills. It's also a good place to practice, just thinking skills. And it's a good community.
Well, thank you. I found your presentation extremely articulate and with a lot of very good information. And I personally want to thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, and thank you. And I appreciated the questions. And I am going to do some research on how to change your algorithms, Teresa, because I would love to know if there's a foolproof way to fake out Facebook, Amazon.
All right, I would like to let everyone know that there will be a recording of this presentation on the AARP Alaska YouTube channel. Also, you can go to aarp.org/AK, which is a trusted website, by the way, to find out more information about upcoming events, virtual events in Alaska. Again, that's aarp.org/AK. You can also look for a follow-up email from me. I'm Daryl with the AARP Alaska, and we'll have some handouts that Ruth provided, and we'll include those in the thank you email. So with that, Ruth, I would like to say thank you again. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for coming all the way across the continent virtually. Really appreciate you being with us today. Thanks to Carolyn, Dr. Carolyn Brown, for helping us get this presentation up and moving and across the goal line. Really do appreciate your help on that, Carolyn. And with that, I wish everyone a wonderful day. Take care.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Next time in person.
Sounds great.
Good.